Okay, so the kind of continuing, I should say, this discussion of how biodiversity can be changed. Remember, we've talked about succession, we've talked about disruptions. Yesterday, we looked at the range of tolerance for organisms. Now we're going to follow that up with how organisms can possibly adapt if the environment is stressing them outside that range of tolerance so that they can survive. And these are called adaptations. Now, fitness is a word that we hear a lot. It's fitness and adaptation. Basically, all populations have genetic diversity, and the more genetic diversity, the best. And the reason this diversity exists, we haven't talked about this yet, is because even with organisms that might have very, very similar DNA, as DNA is being copied over and over and over again, random mutations occur in one individual that is not happening in another individual. And then when that individual goes on to reproduce, it passes those chromosomes, those new combinations, onto its offspring. And adaptation is basically a new trait that is a result of this that increases an organism's fitness. Remember, this is not about strength, strongness. It's about its ability to survive, reach adulthood, and reproduce. That is what fitness means. Now, natural selection is the way in which organisms change. So individuals with adaptations will pass them on to their offspring. If they are not advantageous to their environment, they may die off. But if selective pressure causes an adaptation to be advantageous over another, those individuals will live. For example, these mice have different color. In the genome, it really is no advantage to having different color fur to the mice, except when there is pressure from predators. The predators can see the light-colored mice and not the dark-colored ones. So at the end of the day, a simple mutation of this dark-colored mouse compared to the light-colored makes its population increase and the light-colored mouse decrease. The hawk is providing selective pressure in favor of one color over another. Remember that the occurrence of the white and brown mouse is completely random. It's the pressure which causes it to be selected. Now, an environment an organism lives in determines which traits are adaptations, because that environment provides pressure. And as environments change, however, a trait that may have been an advantage at one time may become a disadvantage another time. For instance, when you look at birds with different beak depth, percentage of individuals with a certain beak depth, in drought, finches with smaller beaks may be less advantageous because the only seeds that survive in a drought are those that have harder shells. And so the only food available is hard shells, which makes larger beaks an adaptation and more advantageous. So these traits can evolve and become part of the evolution of the species. The problem with this is that it takes time. This pace, if the pace of the change is too rapid, then those species may not be able to keep up. That advantageous genome may not be able to express itself, and so it dies off before the adaptation is found. If the ocean warms too quickly, maybe fish will not be able to migrate out before they run out of oxygen. The more genetic diversity a population has, however, the more they're able to adapt, because it's a higher chance that one or two or some individuals will have a mutation in their genome which allows them to adapt to their new circumstances. So our selected species, like bacteria and viruses, can adapt really well, whereas humans don't. We take a long time because of our pace of our evolution. Okay, so let's look at what our lesson is today. You're going to look at pikas, because pikas are little animals. What you're going to do is you're going to go to Canvas, you're going to click on this link, And you're going to look at these two videos on pikas. They are little animals. They're in the rabbit family. It's going to tell you a little bit about them, what you need to know, and a little bit about how they live, because pikas live in colder and warmer areas. And in order to do so, because pikas can live in extraordinarily cold environments, up at high altitudes, snow and ice, but they can also live in milder environments. And that takes an adaptation. It's not an easy thing for these animals to live in such diverse environments. Their range of tolerance isn't that broad. So individual pikas have adapted to these different temperatures by body size. And so that's what we're going to look at today. How does body size affect the distribution of pikas in various places? So I'm going to go to here. What will happen is when you go to this right here, this is the PowerPoint that I'm going to show you right now. You can look at the PowerPoint. This is going to give you some information about how the body size and pika adaptation via temperature, how they're related, so that when you go into the next step of the module, you can answer the questions on your template. So I'm going to go to this PowerPoint, and the question is that you're going to answer is, could body size be a natural adaptation that allows pikas to live at different elevations or at different temperatures? Now, on this slide, you don't really need to worry too much about how they got these numbers. They're basically showing you what the criteria they used in terms of how to figure out what a small, medium, or large pika, because the data you're going to see is actual data of truly measured pikas. But what you can look at is this last column. And the last column, if they take circumference of the pika and divide it by the area, then they show that small pikas are 3.97, medium are 2, and large are 1.3. So it says here that pikas have more surface area, big pikas, which means they lose heat more easily. But big pikas also have a lot of internal mass that can help regulate body temperature. So if we measure area, big pikas are also able to manage their heat loss. So what they're going to do is they're going to monitor the circumference divided by the area, which takes the surface area where you lose heat and the internal area where you generate heat, both into account. And what you need to know is the larger this number, the faster that pika will lose heat. So what that means is that small pikas lose heat a lot faster than large ones. And that's something we might have already intuitively known, but here's the data to show you. Large pikas, small pikas will lose heat a lot faster than large ones. Okay, so the rest of the data that you have that you're going to use to answer your questions is, let's look at what the body size distribution is in 3 locations. Each location has a different temperature. If you go up to Washington State, the average summer temperature is 74, and it turns out pikas usually do pretty well in cold weather. It's actually the warmer weather that's more difficult for them. In the distribution in this average summer temperature of 74 degrees, the large pikas are about 66%. The medium pika's survival is about 50%, and the small pika survival is 33%. That means that these small pikas are not surviving in the Washington or summer temperature is 74 degrees. In Oregon, we're going to go up. Our average temperature is going to go up, and you can see the switch. We're switching now from the large, it being a pretty equal distribution between large, medium, and small pika survival. If we increase that temperature even more by going to Nevada, where the average summer temperature is 86, there is now an advantage to the small pika survival than over the large pika. Okay, so that's some of the information that you're going to need to do your lab. So what we're going to do is we're going to go back over here, and you are going to click on your Pika Lab. Now I'm going to turn to it from here so that, let me move this over so y'all can see everything. You're going to pull up your lab. It's going to look like this. Now they have already put instructions in here for you. And it's basically the only thing you need to know. Here's our guiding questions right here. Are smaller or larger pikas adapted to warmer weather? So we're going to get real specific here, and you're going to determine by looking at your data what you think about that. Which pikas are adapted to warmer weather? Now, in the previous chart, they looked at surface circumference versus area. What they found, however, is that correlates almost directly to the body length of the pika from snout to tail. So that's what you see here. We're just going to do body length because that way we only have one measurement and it correlates perfectly to circumference versus area. So we've got all of the lengths of these pikas from Washington, from Oregon, and from Nevada. And what you're going to do, you're going to follow these instructions so that you get an average value for each. You're going to generate this small table here with your average values. And then you're going to make a graph out of this table to put here. Now remember, for your graph, you need to have a title. All of your axes need to be labeled with units. And you need to have some sort of legend which shows, or some kind of labeling on your graph, which shows which line or bar or whatever you decide to do belongs to what. Once you've done that, you put all that here. And then you answer these questions. This is a text box, just like we're always used to. Type those in with a different color. That way I can tell what your answer is. And that's all for now. And I think you should probably be able to finish this pretty easily by the end of the class period.